You served as UN ambassador under President Jimmy Carter. What a wonderful experience that must have been, and what a surprise.
It was, first place, I have never wanted to do anything I've done. Mm-hmm. So I've been totally devoid of ambition. I didn't want to be a congressman. I didn't want to go to the National Council of Churches. I didn't want to go to the UN, see? And Carter insisted. And I was pushing for Barbara Jordan to go to the UN. Mm-hmm. And I said, she's the kind of UN ambassador we need. And Carter said, well, she's smarter, she's a brilliant, much better speaker than you, she's a great lawyer, and if it was the Supreme Court, I'd say no question. But you have one thing that nobody else has right now, and you have an association with Martin Luther King. Mm. And if people are going to take us seriously about human rights worldwide, he said, I need you at the UN. But Coretta told me, he said, please don't go to the UN. She said, Stevenson couldn't stay there but 2 years with the Kennedys. How long do you think you'll be able to stay? See? And I said, well, I'll stay longer than Stevenson.
I do know that there were some major challenges. There were pushbacks from the State Department. And I'd be very interested in hearing you talk a little bit about those situations and maybe some of the precipitating events and comments.
It was my commitment to everything. Mm-hmm. The State Department is a bureaucracy that's designed to perpetuate 19th century European views of the world. Mm-hmm. Now you can say whatever you want to say about it, but the way they look, I mean, Kissinger was making policy about Africa and didn't know a single African south of the Sahara. And I tried to tell him that Agostinho Neto was a physician and a poet and the son of a Methodist minister. And I said, this is a man, an intellectual who, you know, you would enjoy conversation with. Julius Nyerere is a devout Roman Catholic who translated Shakespeare into Swahili. See, I said, these are scholars, they're probably better scholars than you are if you got to know them. You can't just write them all off as communists and try to push them down and let the white people stay in charge. But that was the State Department position when I was there. Carter deliberately reversed that. And he asked me, and it's what I call the politics of respect. He gave me a note saying, I want you to go to Africa and ask as many African leaders as possible what their expectations are of this administration.
Wow.
See? And he said, and when I came back and said, they want just what we want, Mr. President. They want democracy, they want free enterprise, see, and they want to develop their countries. And I said, we come from the South, and we know that that's the best thing that happened to us, was the growing economy that where everybody could be equal and try to be equal, have the right to be pressed for equality. And I said, that's what they want. And he says, well, we can help them with that. But now the State Department says that wasn't, they literally called me a liar and said that it can't be that way. See? And so we had a series of meetings. I think we started with Obasanjo from Nigeria. And it was amazing because they went to church together, and Obasanjo read the New Testament scripture. Carter read the Old Testament scripture in this Baptist church. And Carter said, the first time I heard of Nigeria was when our Baptist missionary training school had a car wash to help a little school, and he called the name of the town in Nigeria. when Obasanjo got up, he said, "Mr. President, I want to thank you for helping that little school." He said, "I walked barefoot to that little school
Wow.
every day, and I would not be here if it were not for that little school." See? And so they were immediately on respectful.
And that's a statement about civility and building community.
It is. And Carter was not afraid of black people. And he didn't get along with them. He didn't agree with everybody. But he was, he and Mugabe didn't quite get along because they were both, they were black and white, same kind of, I mean, Mugabe doesn't think there's anybody in the world as smart as he is.
I understand.
See? And he is very smart. And he got 4 master's degrees in 9 years in correspondence while he was in jail, including a degree in Latin. You know, and they want to, the State Department and the CIA wanted to make him, in fact, they actually used the term a syphilitic idiot in one of the briefings, see? And he and his wife had been Roman Catholic teachers in a Jesuit school in Ghana before he came back for 17 years.
Before the name was changed.
And came back to Zimbabwe. And when he tried to vote, they put him in jail.